A boy who is 9 years old and 1 day old who cohabitates with his Yuvama acquires her, but he cannot give her a bill of divorce until he reaches adulthood. Furthermore, he becomes tummy by cohabitating with a Niddah to the degree that he will rend a bottom couch as tummy as that which is on top. He disqualifies a woman with whom he cohabitates, but it does not cause a woman to eat truma. He disqualifies an animal from being offered on the altar, and the animal is stoned to death on his accounts. And if he cohabitates with any one of the arayos, forbidden partners, mentioned in the Torah, they are put to death on his account, but he is not liable to punishment. A girl who's 11 and 1 day old, her vows are examined. A girl who's 12 years old and 1 day old, her vows stand. And a girl's vows are examined her entire 12th year. A boy who was 12 years old in 1 day, his vows are examined. And a boy who was 13 years old in 1 day, his vows stand. And a boy's vows are examined his entire 13th year. Before this time, even if they say, we know unto whom we vowed, or we know unto whom we consecrated, their vows are not valid vows. Excuse me, not valid vows, and the consecrations are not valid consecrations. After this time, even if they say, we do not know unto whom we vowed, or we did not know on whom we consecrated, their vows are valid vows, and the consecrations are valid consecrations. The Chachamim created a metaphor for the developmental stages of a woman, a green fig, a small fig, and its semel. At the stage when she is likened to a green fig, she is called a child. The stage of the small fig alludes to the days of her na'aris, and during both the stage and that stage, her father is entitled to her fines and her earrings and to the adultment of her earnings and to her annulment of her vows.
Father doesn't get her earrings.
Right. Sameh alludes to a stage of full adulthood. Once she reaches full adulthood, her father no longer has authority over her.
Okay. Ezehu simaneh. So carrying on from the previous Mishnah, what are the simanim that make a woman graduate between the different stages of development? Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Mishi Yaleh Hakemet Tachas Hadad. So when she gets a fold under her breast. Rabbi Akiva Omer Mishi Yatu Hadadim, when they actually fold over. Ben Azai Omer Mishi Tashker Haputomes, when the areola darkens. Rabbi Yossi Omer Kadeshi He Nosen Yad Al Haoketz Vehi Shoker Veshohe Lachzor. Basically, if you had to push the nipple in, and it would stay there for a bit before coming out. That's okay. We won't dwell too much on all these things, and I don't think I'll use this for the thumbnail.
Right.
Of the video. Okay.
Okay.
Bas esrim shana shelo hevia shtei saros. So a woman who is 20 years old and has still not put forth 2 pubic hairs. Now, tavi raya shehi bas esrim shana. Now, let her prove that she's actually 20 years old. Vihi ailonis, and now she is classified as an ailonis. In other words, a woman who is just genetically infertile. Okay, she's not going to develop. She's not going to reach sexual maturity ever. Lo choletzes v'lo misyabemes. So if she had to be, if she was married to somebody, and now her husband died without children, then she gets neither chalitza nor yibum, because the whole marriage was presumably in error. Let me just check that Shnema Barak Pashas Yibum. It's only right. She not that the marriage is in error, but that the whole point of Yibum is so that she should have children. And if she is right, if she's not capable of having children because she's never sexually matured, then forget it. There's no din of Yibum, and she doesn't even need chalitza. Ben Isrim Shana Shelo Hevi Shtei Saros. Now, what about a boy who reaches 20 years old and he also has not sexually matured? Yavira Yashu Ben Isrim Shana V'hu Saris, and he's considered a eunuch. Okay, not technically a eunuch because he hasn't actually been castrated, but he's considered sexually not immature. Lo choletz v'lo miyabem. He is not eligible to do chalitza or yibum. And if and he's not counted among the brothers. Then if he's the last surviving brother, then the widow is free to go and marry once he's officially a saris. Elu divrei Beis Hillel. That says Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai omrim zeh v'zeh b'nei shmona esrei. So Beis Shammai say you can do this already at 18 years old. Rabbi Eliezer omer hazacha kedivrei Beis Hillel v'hanakeva kedivrei Beis Shammai. He says that a woman can be judged earlier rather than, and the halacha does not follow Rabbi Eliezer. It follows Beis Hillel as they originally said at age 20 for both. Okay. Okay, says Perik Vav. Siman hatachton ad shelo ba ha'elyon. So this is talking about a woman again. The lower siman, in other words, pubic hairs as opposed to her breasts. Or choletes or misyabemes. So basically once she gets pubic hairs, that immediately says that she's going to be fine, even if she hasn't grown breasts. Or choletes or misyabemes, she is eligible both for chalitza and yibum. Ba ha'elyon ad shelo ba hatachton. Or what happens if she starts growing breasts before she's grown any hairs? Even this is a hypothetical thing, says the Mishnah. It's not really possible, but let's talk about it anyway. Rabbi Meir Omer lo choletzes v'lo misyabemes. So Rabbi Meir says not eligible. Chachamim omrim o choletzes o misyabemes mipnei shamru אפשר לתחתון לבוא עד שלא בא העליון, אבל אי אפשר לעליון לבוא עד שלא בא התחתון. So it's impossible for it to go in the other direction. If she's already got the upper sign, then there's no need to worry about the lower sign, and therefore she is completely eligible for either chalitza or yibum. Okay, and zeo.
And base hay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this fan on. The sages propose a metaphor regarding a woman, the room, the vestibule, and the attic. Blood of the room is tummy. If blood was found in the vestibule, it's doubt is tummy, since it is presumed to have come from the uterus. A woman has 5 tummy shades of blood: red, black, a shade similar to the radiance of a crocus, a shade similar to earth waters, and a shade similar to diluted wine. Shammai says also a shade similar to fennec Greek waters and similar to the juices of roasted meat, while Beis Hillel says these shades tahu. Reb Yossi says it conveys tumah neither in this manner or in that manner. Yes, I skipped the page, sorry. The color yellow, Akiva ben Mahav declares it tumah, while the sages declare it tahor. Reb Meir says even if yellow blood does not convey tumah as a blood stain, it conveys tumah as a liquid. Reb Yossi says it conveys tumah neither in this manner or in that manner. Which shade is similar? Shade is red, similar to the blood of a wound. Which shade is black, similar to this keris? Deeper than this is tummy, weaker than this is tahor. Which shade is like the radiance of crocus, similar to the most brilliant part of it? Which shade is like earth waters that produce when one takes soil from the valley of Bet Karam and floats water upon it? Which shade is like diluted wine, 2 parts water and 1 part wine of Sharon growth?
Okay.
Sharon wine.
Okay, Taurus.
Okay. Okay, Yud Aleph. One who lacks the 5 the olive press because of the presses, but there were in the olive press vessels there were tamei midras. Reb Meir says the olive presses is tamei. Reb Yehuda says the olive press is tahor. Reb Shimon says if the vessels are tahor for them, the olive press is tamei. If the vessels were tamei for them, the olive press is tahor. Reb Yossi says, but why are the contents of the press tamei? Only because Amma Aretz are not acquainted with the tumah of movement. Presses were coming in and going out of the olive press, and there were tummy beverages to the olive press. If between the beverages and the olives there are enough distance for them to dry their feet on the ground, the olives are tahor. If in front of the presses and the grape harvests there was tumah, they are believed, since they are believed to say, we did not touch it. And similarly, the children among them may go outside the entrance of the olive press and relieve themselves behind the fence, and they are deemed to be still tahor. How far may they go and redeem tahor? Only as far as he can see them. With regard to olive presses and grape harvests, once he brings them into the area of the cave, is sufficient. These are the words of Reb Meir. Yoshi says he must stand over them until they immerse. Reb Shimon says if they are tahor to themselves, he must stand over them until they immerse. If they are tummy to themselves, he does not have to stand over them until they immerse. Okay. Let's see, 10. I have to go. We're finished with Taharos then. Tomorrow.
Taurus. Is it tomorrow? No, I think we've got another couple days in Taurus.
Yeah, we do. I'm sorry. I looked at the wrong thing. Okay. All right.
Okay, Niddah.
Okay, Daled Vav.
Zion.
Zion. Baharis had both living skin and expansion. If subsequently the living skin disappeared, the nega is still tummy because of expansion. If the expansion disappeared, the nega is still tummy because of living skin. The same rule applies to white hair until expansion. If the nega went away and returned at the end of the week, it is treated as if it remained unchanged. If the nega went away and returned after it was declared tahor, it is examined anew. If the nega was bright and became dull, or it was dull and became bright, or it's treated as if it was remained unchanged, as long as it does not become less bright than the four shades. If the nega contracted and then expanded, or expanded and then contracted, Rabbi Akiva renders it tummy, and the sages render it tahor. A bahar is the size of a gris expanded by a half a gris, but a half a gris of the original bahar has disappeared. Rabbi Akiva says it must be examined anew, and it can come and render it tahor. A bahar is the size of a gris expanded more than a half a gris, and a half a gris of the original bahar has disappeared. Rabbi Akiva renders it tameh, and the sages render it tahor. A bahar is the size of a gris expanded by more than a gris, but the original bahar has disappeared. Rabbi Akiva renders it tameh, and the sages say it must be examined anew. Okay. Okay. Dalet Hay. If one takes payments for inspecting Bakoros, we do not slaughter them by his sanction unless he is an expert like Ayala Ayavna, whom the sage is permitted to take 4 issues for small livestock and 3 issues for large livestock, whether unblemished or blemished. If one takes payments for judging, his decisions are void. For testifying, his testimonies are void. For sprinkling or for mixing purification, his water is like of cave water, and his ashes are like ordinary ashes. If he was a Kohen and then he contaminated him from eating his tumah, he may give him to eat, to drink, to anoint himself. If he was an old man, he may give him a donkey upon which to ride, and he may give him his pay as a laborer. If he once is suspected of Bakor violations, we are not purchase from him either venison or animal untanned hides. If Elias says we may purchase from him the hides of females, we may also not purchase from him and wool that is bleached of its dirt, and we may purchase from him threads and garments. Okay, we have Aleph. Every document which a Kuthian witness on it is void, except for Gittin and documents of emancipation of slaves. It once occurred that they brought before Rabbi Gamliel a kafar unsna, a get who witnesses were Kuthians and validated it. All documents which are processed in Gentile courts, although the signatures of Gentiles are valid except for Gittin and documents of emancipation of slaves. Reb Shimon says they are also valid. They were not mentioned as far as being void, except when they were made by private individuals. One who says, give this get to my wife, or this document of emancipation to my slave, if he wants to retract in both of those cases, he can retract. These are the words of a mayor. They can comment, however, say in case of Gittin, but not in case of documents, emancipation of slaves, because we can benefit a person in his absence, that we may not cause detriment to a person except in his presence, or if he wants to refrain from supporting a slave, he is permitted. But to refrain from supporting his wife, he is not permitted. He said to them, but he is disqualifying a slave from eating truma, just as he is disqualifying his wife. And he said to him, this is because he is his possession. If someone says, give this get to my wife, or this document of emancipation of my slave, and he dies, then I shall give it after his death. If one says, give 100 zuz to so and so, and he dies, and they shall give it after they shall give it after his death. Okay.
One more.
If one brought a gift from overseas and said it was written in my presence, but not and was signed in my presence, or it was signed in my presence, but not it was written in my presence, and or all of it was written in my presence, and half of it was signed in my presence, or half of it was written in my presence, and all of it was signed in my presence, it's void. If one says it was written in my presence, and one says it was signed in my presence, it is void. If two say it was written in my presence, and one says it was signed in my presence, it's void. Rabbi Yeshua, however, validates it.
Yeah.
However validates it, and if one says it was written in my presence and he said 2 was signed in my presence, it's valid. Okay.
Right.
Shabbat. Okay. Kate Bess. One who takes
Gimel.
Excuse me?
Yes, Gimel.
Gimel?
Yeah, Gimel.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hide enough to make an amulet, parchment enough to write the smallest section of its filling, namely Shema Yisrael, ink enough to write 2 letters, sibum enough to paint 1 eye, paste enough to put at the end of the birdcatcher's board, pitcher sulfur enough to make a small hole therein, wax enough to put in the opening of a small hole, crushed brick enough to make the opening of a gold refiner's crucible. Rabbi Yehuda says enough to repair a prop of a tripod. Coarse bran, enough to put in the opening of a gold refined crucible, and quick lime, enough to smear girl's smallest limb. Rabbi Yehuda says enough to flatten out the hair of the temples, and Rabbi Nachman says enough for forehead plaster. Red clay, enough for the soil of packing sacks. These are the words of Rebbe Kiva. The sages say enough for a seal of letters. Nor refined sand, enough to fertilize a cabbage stalk. These are the words of Rebbe Kiva. But the sages say enough to fertilize a leek. Coarse sand, enough to put on a full trial liter of reed small enough to make a pen. But if it was thick or cracked, enough to cook with it the most easily cooked eggs, beaten and put into a stew pot.
Okay.
Bone,
That's it. You're
You,
done.
you probably understand this better than I do. I see we have a minute or two here. I told you we were renting